Join me in this social analysis where I try to discuss the rising anti-foreign sentiment in Japan with the neoliberalism of the last 30-40 years.
Business owner, educator, and lifelong observer of politics and economics, making sense of complex issues.
In Japan, for the last 30 or so years, there's been deflation, right? So what that means is that the economy hasn't really grown. There's been periods where it's been, 0.3 or minus 0.1 or, basically nothing's happened here for 30 years. It's been frozen in time. Meanwhile, the rest of the world has run ahead. The stock market's gone up, prices have gone up, wages have gone up, cost of living has gone up. But, they haven't evened out, but somewhere along the line, the whole world ended up earning more money and Japan didn't, basically. So during that time, the Japanese government sat on its hands and didn't do the reforms that it needed to do. It continued its fairly right-wing policies and economic policies, monetary policy and fiscal policy that it had always done. It didn't try anything new. It didn't attempt to restructure the country like other countries in the region did. Indonesia and Malaysia, for example, who went through a lot of pain to get where they are now. But basically, Japan fell behind. And when COVID hit, Japan had been running a campaign for about 10 years to increase tourism. Concurrently, they'd also been running, for longer than that, an immigration program to import workers to make up the slack for the lack of laborers in Japan, which, mind you, are being all tied up in pointless businesses that are always on the verge of collapse, but never do. But anyway, so when COVID hit, we didn't lock down, by the way. Japan didn't lock down. They just closed restaurants and bars. Everything sort of continued as normal. But anyway, after COVID, you in the States had stimuluses. Other countries had stimuluses, but the States was pretty big. And there was pent-up demand, there was pent-up cash, there was people were keen to get out and start living their life again. And you ended up with high inflation. Mostly, it's been generally agreed, this is not my opinion, generally agreed by economists that inflation was made up of supply side problems, supply side shock, that the stuff wasn't being made and people wanted to buy stuff and it just didn't exist. And there was logistics issues as well. And a lot of it was price gouging, just putting up prices because you could. And it was cash, the stimuluses. They make up a part of that inflation as well. So Japan finally got some inflation because imports got more expensive. Japan now runs deficits in trade and imports went up. Now, this coincided with 30 years of no price increases, 30 years of no wage increases. Suddenly, we get the 2-3% inflation. And mind you, that's an average. Some stuff went up 10-20%. Same for you guys. On average, it was about 2-3%. You guys had about 9%. Other countries, similarly, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And your wages went up sometimes to meet that. But in Japan, it was almost like a triple price shock because we got the post-COVID increases that before that the prices had been masked by the high Japanese yen. So we had the yen devalued, we had general price increases globally, plus the dollar strengthened, and oil and all those commodities having, always been conducted in their sales in the dollar. When the dollar appreciated something like 20%, it gave Japan a real hit. And so we didn't just get inflation, we got inflation on inflation on devaluing of our currency. So I worked it out one time that before COVID and post-COVID, in purchasing power, our income was down something like 40%. Very rough. This is just my amateur estimation. That by American standards, what I could buy on my income now was down 40%. And so it created, for the first time in 30 years in Japan, a couple of things. First, people were shocked at how much stuff had become. And we were inundated with tourists. Country needs the cash, that's good, but suddenly Japan was the destination. After all the efforts to make Japan a destination, which it hadn't been because it was always too expensive, now it was the place to go. New, interesting, safe, clean, open, delicious, and cheap. Really, really cheap. And the Japanese are just, in my opinion, shocked at how many foreigners are coming now, and they feel overwhelmed. And this is why I've said before, they're in their infancy in a number of things. They're in their infancy with inflation, with immigration, with tourism, and they are reacting in a way that all peoples in all countries react when they are seen to be not having it fair. And this is where the Japanese first parties, or this particular party that started on YouTube, became a sensation in the last election, sprang up out of nowhere, may be verging on cultish behavior, but that's another video, has tapped into this resentment. And this resentment is that foreigners are taking advantage of Japan. That's it in a nutshell. That's not my words, that's what they are saying. Foreigners are taking advantage of Japan and ruining it for the Japanese. That's their take. Now, my take on this is that this has been in the making globally, because this is not, Japan first is not Japanese first. Slip of the tongue there. Japanese first is not different to any other put in country name here first. It's the same thing. It's a resentment. It's a sense that they're not being done right by, and they're being ripped off by foreigners. You're not. You are being ripped off by the corporations. You're being ripped off by your governments colluding with those corporations to create the economic circumstances whereby all the wealth is being transferred up and you are being left with less and less. In America, this is obviously what's happened with the election of Trump. It's happening all around the world, and now it's happening in Japan. The first signs of economic distress, and they've gone straight to foreigners. That foreigners are the cause of this, and if we just get rid of them, everything will be better. It's not. It's systemic. Wages haven't grown in Japan for 30 years, and yet prices just went up 20 more %. It is too difficult for the average Japanese, the average American, the average Australian, the average European to experience the social mobility that their parents did. In Japan, that is so clear right now. In the US and other countries, it's, to me, very clear, but maybe not to others, because there have been bursts of housing increases and healthcare increases and education costs. But overall, in the last 30 years, as a percent of your income, you are nowhere near what it was like for your parents or grandparents in buying a house, in paying for your education, in paying for your healthcare. All those things are so much more a percent of your income now that social mobility is unattainable. Then foreigners come in, you see them getting all these benefits, you think, well, that's where the problem is. It's not. It's the economic policies and the behavior of corporations who've been allowed to do this. So, for me, discussing what's happening in Japan is interesting and new for Japan, and it's a contribution to the understanding of the detrimental economic policies the world has been using for the last 30, 40 years.
If you're still here, honestly, you have no idea how much it helps if you subscribe. I'll keep these coming.